Okay. And then why don't I once again, I have the pleasure of introducing Arnold the engineer, and he's doing part 3 of our career development lecture series. And I think tonight he's going to talk about interviews. The first 2 sessions are recorded and they are on the AIAA page for Region 4. So if you're an AIAA member, you can go see the first 2 sessions, and we're recording this session, which will be put there after today. All right, welcome, Arnold. I'm gonna let you take it away.
Okay, thank you so much for having me again. I love it. This is our 3rd rodeo together. I'm starting to feel sad because the next one is our last one. No, it's not our last one. It's the last of this series. We'll continue to do stuff in the future, I hope. Okay, cool. So today we're talking about interviews. Last time we talked about resumes, and then the time before that we talked about job search strategies. So now we know how to go tackle. So don't apply online. Go network and use people from your alumni, use people from your organizations to go get referrals. You already know how to do a resume. You know that you don't want to summarize, you want to sell. You know that you don't want to be general, you want to be targeted, and then you want to just show how you added value. And today it's hey, I used that strategy to network, or I didn't, but I got an opportunity. I have an amazing resume that got me an interview. So now we have an interview. Now it's the seal the deal situation. How many of you have had interviews? Throw in a 1 in the chat or put your hand up. Hoping most of you have had interviews before, and you're here because you're struggling. If you haven't had an interview, throw in a 0 in the chat. Wow, there you go. That's someone hasn't had an interview. That's awesome. You're already ahead of all of us because all of us didn't take any type of session before we did our first interview. Okay, very cool. Let's see. I get extra excited when I see, I'm not saying you're a freshman, but when I see like freshmen coming to my sessions, and I'm like, wow, if I was a freshman, I was already thinking about these things like you are, I would have. I did land my dream job, but I would have landed the dream position. I did land dream position. I don't know, but I would have got my dream internship. I didn't get my dream internship. Okay, so there we go. So preparing for the interview, and you can all see my screen. We're good. If you have any comments or anything, feel free to go off mute. Feel free to throw anything in the chat. We try to keep this informal. Let me pull up the chat just so I have it open in case anyone throws anything in there. Okay, cool. So preparing for the interview. This is all around preparing. It's kind of interesting. So once you have an interview, you are so close to landing a job. I think it's like people like you're 1 in 3 or 1 in 2 to get a job once you have an interview. Honestly, it's sealing the deal at the interview. So you're so close. And interviewing is initially intimidating. It's really intimidating if you've never interviewed before. But with today's information, you will land that offer. You will feel much more confident. We'll talk about things like, how do I stand out? How can I seem more confident? What will they ask me? We'll learn a little bit about all that. And this is how I feel when I get an interview. It's like, I don't know if I'm happy or nervous. So I just feel like, this is awesome, but now I'm nervous because now I have to go do a great job in interviews. And I actually just interviewed last week. I've had 2 interviews last week. So I'm crossing my fingers to see if I got one of those positions. It was for some manager roles. So I'm trying to get into management now. So fingers crossed. Okay. A little bit about me if you don't know, and the reason why I share my background story is so everyone on the call realizes there is nothing special about me. I come from a low income background. I'm a minority, 1st generation college student. I grew up in Central America, so I was born in the U.S., but then I grew up in Central America, and I came back to the U.S. for college. And I was working at a warehouse. I didn't come back for college. That sounds fancy. I came back to work at a warehouse. There we go, Martin. His wife is from Honduras. So yeah, I came back to work at a warehouse, hated my job, and I said, you know what? I am way too smart to be working at this job. It was a warehouse, just moving packages around, and I was like, I need to do something. I need to get an education. So I started going to a community college where I didn't even know what engineering was. So if I could have started without knowing what engineering was and landed all my dream jobs and all my dream opportunities, then you can too. I went to Ivy Tech Community College, and then my bachelor's and my master's from IUPUI. A lot of you do not know what IUPUI is. Usually if there's a room, it's kind of fun to say, hey, does anyone know about IUPUI? No one raises their hand, or there's like one person. So yeah, if I can go from a non-traditional colleges and from a non-traditional background to the biggest aerospace companies in the world, you can too. So that's kind of the, hey, I can do it, you all got this. So if you know what engineering was before you started college, then you're already ahead of me. So you can all do it. So actually, let me see, did I miss anything in here? Nope. Um, and then I had so many interviews when I was a student, right? At first I had no interviews, then I kind of conquered the resume, started to get interviews, and I made so many mistakes while interviewing. And I do not want you to repeat them. I want you to go do much better. I want you to get all the offers. Not like I did, where I kind of had to scroll through some of them. And I put 2 in red here because I bragged to Raytheon about having an offer from Boeing. Probably you shouldn't be bragging about another offer at an interview. There's ways to use it as leverage, but not bragging like I was. I was just like, so excited, I guess, about the Boeing job. During the interview at Lockheed Martin, I twice told them, hey, you know what? I know you're interviewing me for this job, and I appreciate it, but I'm not really interested in this position. I'm interested in another position. That's another big no-no. Yeah, that's why I didn't get that job, and it was kind of crazy because like they flew me out to Marietta, Georgia, and it was for like their operational leadership development program. And I pretty much told them like, oh, I'm not interested in this one. I'm interested in your engineering one, which I just didn't know. And yeah, so those are some stories that I don't want you to do. After that, I've had interviews with a lot of companies, but here are some of the aerospace related ones: Pratt and Whitney, GE, Honeywell, and then those that have asterisks, I actually got offers from them. And it was kind of in order, right? At the beginning, I was doing terrible. Then I started to get a little bit better, and then I just ended up getting offers from most companies: Rolls-Royce, Blue Origin, Cummins, Allison Transmission, Boeing, NASA. It was pretty cool to get offers from a lot of these companies that I would have dreamed of. Oh, and Northrop Grumman also actually interned at Northrop Grumman, so I'm not sure why it's not on there. So here's the pictures of me, intern at Northrop Grumman, intern at Aerodyne, and then working full-time at Boeing. So yeah, if I can, with coming from my background, interview and get offers from all these companies, it's not impossible. It's actually, I've had mentees that have gotten interviews from like 9, 10 companies, and are like offers from like 9 companies at a conference just because they use all these little things that I didn't know that I do now. And I've interviewed about 40, 50 people by now. And so I've got to be on the other side, on the recruiter side, to hire people. So here's some of the things that I learned too. Also, during the day, I am a lead systems engineer at Boeing. I'm also a talent ambassador for Boeing. And on the side, I like to do things that we call non-traditional college success, or Arnold the engineer. Kind of more my professional side is everything around coaching, speaking, writing a book that I've been writing for like a year now. And it's not even that long of a book. It's just that I am not that good at sitting down and writing, but hey, it's gonna someday get there. And then I just create content around helping people get their dream job. That's really the punchline for me. It's like I want people to land their dream jobs. So what you're here for, let's just get into it. You are almost always going to get these 3 questions in an interview, right? We're just jumping straight into it. It's like, okay, cool. I guess stepping back a little bit is, how do I feel confident at an interview? How do I go in and show confidence? That's usually the biggest question I get. We'll talk about little tips later on, but the biggest thing is to be prepared. Just being really prepared. And that's where this comes into play. It's, hey, you want to prepare by spending most of your energy on the 3 questions you will 100% get asked. You will 100% get these questions asked. So if you already know that you're going to get them, then we need to have really good answers. So first, some variation of why you want to work at their company. They're going to ask you like, hey, why are you interested in this position? Why do you want to work at this company? They'll ask you something like that. Then they'll tell me about yourself, or, hey, can you explain to me through your experience what's relevant for this position? Or they'll word it a whole bunch of different ways. But there's usually a tell me about yourself question so I can get a broad understanding. And then at the end, they're going to ask you, do you have any questions? So those are the 3 things you know for sure you're going to get asked. And then if you notice, the first 2 are right at the beginning, and the last one is literally at the end. So it's like the bookends. It's like the 2 buns of a burger. It's like you want to do a really good first impression. You want to leave them with a really good impression. That way, everything in the middle, we can kind of get it like mix and match. But as long as we get the top and the bottom right, we're pretty really good. Get to the next slide. So how do we answer those questions? let's think about it a little bit. Why do you want to work at blank company? Usually people go and they answer why they're an aerospace engineer, why they're an engineer. They answer why they want to work in the aerospace company, but they forget like, hey, why do you want to work at this company? I've been at situations where people just described aerospace, and I'm like, well, why do you want to work at this specific company I'm hiring for? And then they're like, oh, so you don't want to leave that first impression, right? You want to be really specific. So instead of just talking about generics, you should focus on what I call the company's 3 Ps: their purpose, their people, and their products. I guess I wrote it down the other way: products, purpose, and people. Um, and let's hit on some of these. So what do I mean about their products, their purpose, and their people? So products, right, is like, hey, go look at what they do, what they create. So look up the most recent news to see if there's anything exciting you want to bring up that shows that you follow the company. Go learn about, hey, what's going on. For example, Northrop Grumman. Let's say Northrop Grumman, right, aerospace company. A lot of people are interested in. I talked about how much I liked their B-2 bomber when I was going for an internship. Right now, if you're have an interview with them, you can talk about their recent bomber, their Raider, or actually I think they called this shit, they changed the name. Oh no, yeah, Raider, and then their GBSD, their nuclear missiles, like Sentinel. So go read up on those and talk to them about it, right? So that would be interesting. You could talk about, hey, their products. I know about your products and I think they're really cool. So go look at, hey, I saw that you guys recently won a contract on the next generation long range bomber, or you can talk about that as you saw it, kind of the release of it. And these things, people will be proud of, hey, this person really likes the stuff I work on, and like that'll make that person feel proud. Talk about that company's purpose. So you want to look at the company's mission and vision on the website. See if that matches your aspirations. For example, let's say Boeing. Boeing's mission is to connect, protect, explore, and inspire the world through aerospace innovation. I told him how I felt about Boeing connecting the world. And I said, hey, when I had my interview, and I said, you know what? Boeing connects the world and it makes the world smaller. I can now go to my family in Honduras in a couple of hours instead of having to drive or something else. We create innovation. And then I talked about, hey, I was also an intern in the Department of Defense, where I was a contractor, and I showed like I really valued keeping our country and the world safe. So I'm kind of showing the protect portion, right? And then I talked about, hey, I fell in love with aerospace because of space exploration, a competition I did with NASA. So I'm throwing in specifics. The thing here is like, I'm being specific. I'm not just saying, yeah, you know what, your products are really cool. I believe in your mission and vision, and then the people are really cool. I'm not just saying that. I'm saying, hey, I believe in your purpose, and here's how specifically I align with that. If for me, connecting the world, Honduras, closer, protecting the world, I interned in the Department of Defense, and then also space exploration, my love for that. So you want to be specific, right? Their products, you want to talk about the specific products that you know about, you do your research on. And the same thing with people. The thing with it is with people is companies really want to make sure you're going to be a good cultural fit. So making sure you're talking about, hey, I have some mentors from your company, or I've been to different sessions from your company, and the people seem to really like their job. The people seem really amazing. So if you're telling someone, hey, I want to work at your company because your products are cool, the mission of your company is really is I align with it, and then the people seem like I would be a good cultural fit. That answer right there at the beginning, you're leaving a humongous first impression to kill it off with the next question. So think about this, right? So, okay, just from what I've said so far, are you learning stuff? Are you like, okay, I already got value out of this presentation just by the first couple of slides? Are you learning things? Is this new? Is everybody has seen things like this before? Are you learning? Throw in, okay, I'm starting to see some thumbs up. You can throw in the chat. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, good. Okay, cool. And then we'll leave some time at the end for questions. So let's see. Okay. Next questions we're going to ask you. So now you left a really good first impression with why you want to work at that company. And honestly, so what I did, and I wanted to launch it on LinkedIn, but I had some problems launching it. But I pretty much went to talk to like 20 recruiters at the career fair, at Boeing, and then I talked at Northrop, then I talked at Lockheed. But all the Boeing recruiters said the same exact thing, which I didn't. I was so surprised. They said, I was like, what's the number one thing you want to get out of a candidate? And they said, hey, I want someone that's passionate about aerospace. That's pretty much what most of them said. I did not plan it. Everyone kind of said the same thing, which I was like, huh, interesting. So if you're showing the passion that you have for that company and aerospace, then you're just gonna knock it out of the park since the beginning. Everything else you say is just gonna be like the cherry on top. So then they're gonna talk to you about, right, hey, they can ask you this question around tell me about yourself in many different ways. The most common is tell me about yourself, but one actually they can say, hey, can you talk me through your resume? Why are you a good fit for this rotation? I mean, for this position. They can ask this question in so many ways. They don't care about your family or your life story. I'll just be honest with you. Yeah, if they're talking about, hey, tell me about yourself. But in reality, what they want to hear is why you're a perfect fit for this role. So they can fill this position and move on to go fill the next one, or they can go work. So that's the thing, right? You're like, yeah, we're having a great conversation here, but we're also interviewing like 10 people at once. So it's like, okay, get to the point. Okay, and I'm just thinking, does this person meet all the criteria? If they do, if they then great, then we give them an offer, and we go check them out. So I think the big thing here is making sure you're showing, right, that you are a perfect fit for that position. And we'll talk a little bit about more an example. So some things I would be like, hey, I'm Arnold Morales, I'm mechanical engineering. I'll say student. I don't know what's the mix here, but I'm a mechanical engineering student, passionate about aerospace. And then I would highlight why I'm perfect fit. You can find what the hiring managers are looking for. Guess where you can find, I guess I have to write it there, but you can find exactly what the hiring managers are looking for by the job description. I would just go through that job description, read the whole thing, and add in comments everywhere that you have experience. So that way, when they're talking about yourself, you can talk about that experience. And then you kind of word it so it's not like, oh, I'm just literally reading your job description, right? You want to make a nice wording. So that's like one of the number one things, like, okay, really wants to work at our company. And then he's a perfect fit, or they're a perfect fit for this position because they just told us all their experience and it's all relevant to this job. But you've really been prepared. So adding comments anywhere in that job description, right? And then if you don't know something on the job description, that's the time to go research. Go on YouTube, go do all the research you can on those things that you don't know on the job description. So when they ask you, you know a little bit of it. You can say things like, well, I actually don't have hands-on experience, but I've done some research on that topic. It's something I've been interested to learn about. I know this and that. So you're a little bit, if in case you get asked later, right? Because they might ask you about the job description items. So I think that's a great way to make sure you're answering that question correctly. Let's see, and then passion projects. Something personal or exciting, a hobby or something people can relate to. I usually talk about creating content, helping students. That's what I usually do. I'll give you a Blue Origin example. So I was like, hi, I'm Arnold Morales. So I guess actually, no, there's like, why you're perfect for this role? I would be like, oh, so I'm a perfect fit for this role because I'm currently a lead engineer on the safety team, and they're like looking for a safety engineer. And I've done this and this and this on safety. And I was just looking through their job description saying, I've created fall trees, I've created FAMIAs, and like all the things I grabbed from their job description. I've created safety assessments. I worked on the integration aspects. And then anything that I worked on some model-based systems engineering. So I was just throwing out everything pretty much on the job description, talking about things. And then at the end, I throw the, hey, I also like to help students land their dream job. This is kind of my passion project. I create content on LinkedIn. That's something, I'm actually a talent ambassador at Boeing now. They kind of realized that it was cool to do. So now I actually get paid also to do speaking engagements and things. So that's something really cool that you can add, right? So like that is a much better answer than just saying, oh, I did this education. I've had these internships and these jobs. I've had this and this. You want it because it's just going to bombard them with information. They're going to get overwhelmed, and you're not going to highlight the important parts, which is what is relevant to that position. I feel like I'm going a little too quick. So yeah, I think that's going to be really good. If we have some time later, we might do an example of like looking through a job description, or we'll see how much time we have later on. But that's usually like the best way to think about their question around tell me about yourself. Okay. Any questions about tell me about yourself or why you want to work at that company? Just because these are probably the two most important questions, because that's going to kick off the whole attitude of the interview. Any questions so far?
I'm glad you told us they're not interested about our family lives, and when they say, tell me about yourself, it's tempting to say a few things that might be relevant, but that's a good reminder, whether it's a teaching position or an engineering position, aerospace. I'm going to take that as gospel. They're not really interested in the family life, and you can do a lot better than answer family.
Yeah, and they're not interested in your entire career. They're interested in what of this is relevant to the position, especially like the time, right? Depending on how much time you have, usually keep it around 7 to 10 minutes. Summarize your entire career in 7 to 10 minutes. So you're really going to want to hit on what's relevant to that position, because these people, they've been interviewing people nonstop, back to back. They're kind of like zombies now, just repeat, okay. But then this person comes and you make it easy, because I'm literally looking at the job description, seeing what things you have, and then you're like, okay, check. I'm like, hey, this person has everything. Passionate about the job and has everything that we want, looking for. So it just made it easy for me. That's pretty much the whole thing of all of this, like with the resume and everything, is like, just make it easy for the recruiter and hiring manager so they can hire you. So yeah, thanks for your comment, Doug or Douglas. Okay, and then at the end, they're always going to ask you, do you have any questions for us? The answer you're going to give is yes. I have questions. Because if you do not take advantage of this valuable time, the next candidate will, and they will give that big advantage, right? They'll talk to the recruiter more, the hiring manager. So Bob, that was trained by Arnold, is going to ask a whole bunch of questions versus someone else that wasn't trained by Arnold, and that person's going to get the more one-on-one time. They're going to be able to talk more and ask good questions to show more interest. So those are all ways to really, really important. Some questions that I like is, what is your favorite and least favorite thing about working for a blank company? The way I like this is because people love to talk about themselves. So I think it's a great question. It also makes them speak about their experiences and be vulnerable with you by sharing something they dislike. You can also use this question to find things in common and relate to them. If they're like, yeah, my least favorite thing is about bureaucracy in the company, and it's like, well, I worked at Northrop Grumman, so I know how bureaucracy works. There's a lot of things here, right? You can learn about their favorite things. You're like, oh, that sounds really exciting. The thing with this question is it's personable, so they have to open up with the least favorite portion. Also, they have to be like, they're vulnerable with you, so they'll feel like they trust you more, because they're being just honest with you. One of your questions needs to be, well, and this is a tough one, right? Some people like asking it, some people don't, but I like asking it. Is there anything missing on my resume or anything you think I lack to be a perfect fit for this position? I throw people off with this question. I've only a couple of times have had, I'm gonna have to think about that and give you a response back, or we'll let you know after the interview, because they just want to tell me. But usually they tell me, you know what, you're a great fit for this position. So it solidifies in their head that I'm amazing. Or they tell me, hey, I wish you had more experience, more design experience. And then I was like, oh, actually, I appreciate you bring that up, because I haven't been a design engineer at Boeing at all, but I was a design engineer at Northrop Grumman, for example. So that's your last chance to save yourself. Yeah, another question that you really, really should ask is, what are the next steps in the process? When am I going to find out the outcomes of your interviews? So because if not, you're just waiting forever and forever, right? You're like, when are they going to let me know? And so just asking them, like, hey, so, because usually they don't tell you, like, it doesn't come up. So and it varies between hiring manager and everything. So you really want to know what are the next steps in the process. So you're not wondering later, it's like, did I get the job or not? Did they just forget about me? Custom questions. Questions that are specific to them. Okay, Arnold, how am I going to find custom questions? Well, go look them up. Go ask, like, hi, can I get the names of the recruiter? Ask them, hi, can I get the names of the people who are going to be on my interview panel? And then that way you can go look them up on LinkedIn. I only once had people tell me, we don't share that information since it's not relevant. Like one person told me that once. Everybody else just told me, oh, you're going to have these people. And then I looked them up on LinkedIn. I tried to find their information. It just helps knowing a little bit about them, either for small talk at the beginning, or, oh, that's another thing. I think I actually talk about that later. So we'll leave that. But if I don't, remember to talk to me about small talk. Okay. And then the last one I have on here is, This is someone gave me this question. I kind of like it. I kind of don't sometimes, but it's an all right question to have in case you have like backup questions. What are some additional responsibilities or time this position can provide? I think that's a good one because it's like looking into the future and making sure like you sound like you want to stay at that position. But I sometimes like it. Sometimes I like to be really prepared and go into the interviews like knowing about the position and everything. So usually don't like to ask, but it's an okay question. So I will leave it as a backup, but it's general. Okay, so now we've talked about the first questions, and now we've talked about questions you're gonna ask. So we have the bookends of the interview, the beginning and the end. Any questions around the questions that you should ask? Any questions that you said, I don't know if I should ask this question before. It sounds like a dumb question, or this is a great question. Any inputs from anyone? Either if you're not sure about a question, or if you have a better question or some question that you use that you like.
I kind of had one, if that's okay. So
Yep, go
one
ahead.
of the things I usually ask is, it's similar to the first one about like what's your favorite or least favorite thing, but I usually ask like, what does your day to day look like, to get a perspective of what they specifically do, because sometimes like the roles that you're applying for may not tell you the whole story.
Yeah. So the caveat with that, Renato, is I would rather you come into the interview already knowing the role by asking other people before that, or by like reading through the job description and really understanding what it is. So I would prefer if you knew what the role is, or at the beginning if they explain the role, and ask specific questions about the role. So that's why I don't like asking that one, because I want to seem like I'm very knowledgeable about the role already. So that's why usually I do the favorite and least favorite portion, because it's like it's not like, oh, talk to me about the whole thing. That's why I avoid that question. I usually like ask very targeted questions, right? So for one group specifically, for one of the manager roles I'm trying to interviewed for, they are working on something that's really similar to my group, but they have a couple of other organizations that do the same thing. So I was like, hey, I know there's a lot of several organizations that all work on this model-based systems engineering aspect. How does your organization overlap with them, and like what is the differences? So like asking really targeted questions will just show that you're more knowledgeable about the position. And the ways you can know about that, like you're not gonna be knowledgeable if you're in the company, then it's easier to ask around. Looking for connections on LinkedIn, that's another way to find out more about the position. But that's usually I try to understand the position before. So it's a okay question, not a great question, but it's not like a terrible question either. I would probably put it in between like okay and probably don't ask it if you know more about the position. But if it's a case where you really don't know, because you should be knowing what you're interviewing for, right? But like sometimes for students, like internships, even for internships, man, like the job description is detailed enough that you should be able to ask people about what that job looks like. So yeah, so I guess I'm leaning more towards the not a good question.
Thank you.
Hopefully that makes
Sounds
sense.
good. Yeah, thank you.
Is the interview the proper time to bring up questions about compensation? Great question. That is my next slide. Replying to, is the interview T? Almost never. It should probably be from the interviewer's side, if at all, in my honest opinions. Is the interview T? Replying to, is the interview T? Okay. Oh, is the interview, okay, so the previous one for John is replying to Claiborne. That's what I love about these sessions too, because people help each other in the chat. But Claiborne, you brought up a great point. Some general guidelines that I have around just the interview in general. Okay, don't focus on other roles. I did that at Lockheed Martin for like one of their highest leadership development programs right out of college. Don't do that. Which I didn't want it anyways, but at the same time, yeah, if you a option is better than no options. So don't make that same mistake. Don't talk about other job positions if you're interviewing for a specific position. Even if you don't agree, so if you're like, man, I only got an interview for a manufacturing job, but I really want a design job, or vice versa. In big companies, especially big ones, it is usually easy to move around. In the first 4 years at Boeing, I had about 5 to 6 different jobs, and it was because I wanted to. I wanted to be in a rotation program, and so I informally did a lot of rotations. When my managers were happy with it, so it's really easy to move around a big company, especially after like 1 year you've been in a role. It's so easy to move around the company. So I wouldn't worry too much about, hey, it's not my dream position, as long as you have a option, right? If you find a dream position at a dream company, that's even better. But if you don't, then don't worry about it. You can always get it later. But the big thing here is if you want a opportunity, you have to focus on that role that you're interviewing for. So don't focus on other roles. Don't talk about like, hey, can I join your company and this group and then move to another group? And they're going to be like, I don't want to have this person. They're just going to join our team, learn, and then leave. And they're not going to add too much value. So you want to make sure you're focusing on the role. And then the other one is don't talk about compensation. You know, my next session with AIAA is March 14, I believe, and it's around LinkedIn. But there is another session that I do, and we'll figure out how we either like an article on my website or something that you can look at. But I talk a lot about salary negotiation. That's usually like one of my newest topics. But in a nutshell, wait for salary negotiation after you have an offer, so you have more leverage. If at the beginning you talk about compensation, there's only two ways it's going to go. You're either going to put your price too high and you're going to lose an opportunity because you didn't know what you were doing and you put a price that was too high, or you put a price that's too low, and then you're going to have to negotiate and fight back with, hey, yeah, my previous thing that I said was low and I didn't know. So it's just weird. But we have ways to fix that. But you don't want to talk about compensation. You want to wait until you have an offer, because at the beginning you don't have any leverage. So you're against like 20 people. But at the end, if you get an offer, then you have a lot of leverage because they picked you. So now they really want you. They've invested hours and hours in interviewing you and all these things. So they really want you. So you're going to have much more leverage. Hopefully that answers your question. But so yeah, there's no value added in talking about money at this point when you're interviewing. If a recruiter asks you, what is your desired salary? You can tell them, hey, I'm currently not focused on compensation. Instead, I'm focusing on finding the perfect fit and a position I can grow at. So I care more about the position and the growth and the company than the salary. But I'm positive that we will come to an agreement once we get to that point. They're going to be like, fair enough. Or they might keep on bugging you. And if they keep on bugging you, then you're going to say something like, okay, what is the salary range you have for this position? And then if they tell you a number, you're like, okay, I think that's fair. And I fit within that salary range. So you really, really want to avoid that conversation. And this isn't a salary negotiation presentation, but we have that one in another one. But pretty much for this presentation, don't negotiate. Don't talk about compensation. Okay. And then the good old behavioral questions. Okay. So especially traditional aerospace companies. When I'm talking traditional, I mean the Northrop Grumman's, Lockheed Martin's, NASA, Boeing. A lot of them are going to have mostly behavioral questions. And what I mean behavioral is like, hey, tell me about a time this happened. Tell me about a situation where this happened. So that's what I mean about behavioral questions. So most of these questions are usually behavioral. And an excellent way to look for behavioral questions is on things like glassdoors.com, salaries.com. So go look up online, interview questions from Boeing. That's literally what I did for my manager interviews. I look up Boeing first line manager interview questions. NASA, same thing. I go look up what were the questions that other people were asked. And you can give like they're anonymous a lot of times. So it's pretty cool to see what were, so you can get literally some of the answers there. You can search for any specific company at these places. So people share what they've been asked in the past. You might not get the specific ones, but you'll start to see a general similarity. For example, when I was interviewing for a company, I started to realize that they were always going to ask a diversity related question, diversity or inclusion. They were always going to ask a question around conflict with other people. So I started to realize like, oh, okay, there's some trends here of what people ask. Technical, where you didn't understand something, you needed help. Something around scheduling and conflicts of several priorities. So yeah, so you'll start to see patterns of what people ask. Let's see, before the interview, what you want to do is you want to put down what I call PARs now. I call them, what is it? Problem, action, result. So narratives, kind of that third bullet. Sorry, I'm skipping around. So narratives, you want to put like, hey, what are some of the amazing things that I've done? What is the things that I've received big praise from my leadership? I've received an award for. What are those really important things that I've done? I want to put all the situations. You want to add in anytime you had conflict with people, anytime you didn't meet a deadline. You want to think of this ahead of time and have these scenarios ready for when you get a question, so you can kind of just like move them around. How are you going to prepare these scenarios? By putting a PAR, problem, action, result. And that's kind of probably going to STAR. We'll talk about STAR for a second. But yeah, you want to kind of put those, have the set ready of a whole bunch of narratives. In case you get one that's similar, you can pick one. So that's kind of what I do. I honestly just do a sentence. I should probably prepare more for interviews. but I'm going to do a much better job on my next interviews because I don't get one of these positions, just because I realized that interviewing for a manager role is totally different than interviewing for like an engineer role. Okay, yeah. So had difficulties with coworkers, overcoming obstacles, did not meet a deadline, and just general stuff like that. The best examples you want to use are work experience related. If you're a student, internships is probably the best. If you would like to talk about other situations, usually competitions or projects, things where you had to do real world engineering, whereas like you got what you learned in the classroom and had to apply it, and you were in a group setting. Those are usually the best answers. But you can always use like a student organization answer or something that's less technical, but it's less impressive, especially if you're going for a technical role. But if it's a really, really good answer, so for example, one time I got asked, Arnold, can you talk about a time where you had to create something where nothing was there before? And I had examples that were technical, but I was like, you know what? I really want to talk about me creating the first engineering society at Ivy Tech Community College, and like how I created something from zero and it grew to be as big as on campus. So I thought it was a really impressive story. And that was actually the number one thing that the interviewer loved about me. He's like, you know what, Arnold, I feel you're going to go at Boeing, you're going to go create stuff from thin air because you did that at Ivy Tech. So yeah, if you have a really good answer for something that's more like leadership, organizational, then use that. But if you don't, then I would stick with technical competitions, work experience is the best, internships, research projects. Those are amazing to give. But if not, then you could do competitions or projects. And then always answer in STAR format. So STAR, if you don't know what STAR is, go watch YouTube videos on it. This is not going to be a class on STAR. It's situation, task, action, and result. Pretty much is, Arnold, tell me about a time you had no guidance and had to come up with a solution. I'll give you my Ivy Tech one, right? Okay, situation. When I was a sophomore at Ivy Tech Community College, my friends and I went to look for an engineering society and found that none existed. So we started the first engineering society at that community college. What was the task? We had no guidance and we had to create an organization from scratch. Some actions. I took the lead as the president, and you want to say I. You don't want, what did the team do? No, we? No, stop using we. You need to say I. This is where you want to brag. I took the lead as the president and went to the other organizations at the four-year universities and asked them for advice. I went to the teachers and asked them for guidance. I looked up information online myself, and I started to make templates on how to do our events. That way, the organization could keep performing throughout the years. And then the result is, hey, the organization continued after I graduated, and it kept on living without me. It lived for like 2-3 years after I left. It was so cool. I went back to that community college because I was a professor later. I went to like a table, and they didn't even know who I was. And I was like, man, if you knew that I started that organization, that you're the president of, you're like, or they were presenting, I was like, man, that's so cool. So I felt super inspired that day. I was like, I didn't even tell them, like, hey, you know what, I started that organization. I was like, huh, cool. Something lived past myself. But then it died like after 2-3 years, but at least I got those 3 years. So cool. Oh, sorry, I deviated. So yeah, that's the result I was talking about, right? Is, hey, we won organization of the year. I won student leader of the year. I would also usually throw in a lesson learned. So I've learned that whenever I'm new to something and and no template in the process exists, I make sure to create it. So it's easier for the next person joining the team. Yeah, and that's kind of an example of doing STAR, right? Situation, task, action, results. It's really important, results. I like doing lessons and making sure you're doing I. Okay, technical questions. Gonna vary a lot. This is really hard to prepare for, but what you can do, okay. But what you can do though is you can learn everything on the job description, right? And learn the fundamentals of the roles. So for example, if I'm looking for a systems engineering role, because a lot of you are systems engineering, I'm a systems engineer, so I'm biased. Go look online. What is systems engineering? What is the systems engineering beat? Systems engineering basics. They're not going to ask you deep dive questions. They're going to ask you basic questions. You know that you have a basic understanding of systems engineering. So go learn that. How do you know what's a good requirement? How do you know how to decompose a requirement to what level? When can you say a requirement has been decomposed enough? Really basic questions like these, you should have answers to. So if they're going to be technical, I would go learn basics of that role and go learn everything that's on the job description. Go learn whatever you can. A bad answer, do not say, I don't know. That's not a good answer. Talk about what you do know, and then, or talk through how you would solve that problem. So they say, hey, I remember talking about like a feedback loop. And the way that give me 1 second, let me connect my computer before it turns off and we stop having this session. Okay, we're good now. Where was I? Oh, I don't know. Yeah. So talk through how you would solve the problem. That's a much better way than just saying I don't know. I was like, well, I don't actually know the specifics of that, but what I would do is I would go talk to someone about it. I would go look up online. I would go look up at this, and I know this and this about it. So you can kind of walk them through how you would solve that. If you don't know the specific answer, that's much better than just saying I don't know. All right. How are we doing? Is everybody still with me? Everybody learning a lot? Everybody's like, whoa, so much information. Okay, I'm getting some applause. I'm getting, and I do realize that it's really hard to make you an expert at interviewing in 1 hour, right? So the big thing here is to realize that you might not be thinking about things, and you can start going to work on those things. So I would say like you probably want to workshop some of this stuff, like 2-3 hour workshop of just practicing, doing some mock interviews. That's actually a good idea. So all of you went to college because you're going to the aerospace, right? Engineering mostly, or aerospace, or anything else, but you're going to aerospace, so you probably need a college degree. Go to your school, even if you graduated long after, you're always an alumni, so you can always go back, go get mock interviews. That's the best thing you can do. Go practice interviews, ask a friend. I do interview coaching one-on-one. I do charge for that though, but go ask people like me, go ask, there's a whole bunch of other coaches that you can go find online. Just get interview practice with people that can give you feedback. That's the big thing I would say. Go do that. Okay. Let's see. And then ask people at that company, hey, what should I expect from the interview? Ask someone like what I did for Blue Origin when I interviewed with them is I asked Blue Origin systems engineers, hey, what are the jobs? What type of questions should I expect? And they already told me you should expect this, this, and this. So yeah, you gotta go ask people. All right, let's see. So one of the common questions I get is, should I connect with the interviewer or hiring manager before the interview? You should probably know by what I said several times already, yes. While you're waiting to have the conversation, someone else already has accepted and connected and they have a leg up. During the interview, how to do good first impressions. 1, dress to impress. You want to, especially for traditional companies, like the traditional aerospace one, I would probably wear business casual at a minimum. I wear like a blazer, like a jacket. I used to wear ties. I stopped wearing ties, but I used to wear ties. I would just wear the blazer because it gave me an extra level of confidence personally. If you don't, it doesn't matter to you, then you can wear a dress for a traditional. And honestly, even for like the non-traditional, like the SpaceX, Blue Origin, I would still probably business casual. Just so it's not a weird, like, oh, he was in a t-shirt. They shouldn't care, but first impressions, like unconscious bias plays a big role, especially if you're young and then you're wearing like a t-shirt, then you look even younger. So then it's like, oh, this person's like really, really young. So I would make sure that yeah, dress to impress pretty much. First impressions, I don't care what people say, unconsciously they're gonna have bias towards you depending on what their beliefs are. So if they really don't care about your dressing, then cool, you're dressed to impress anyway, so it doesn't matter. And if they do care, then you're dressed to impress. So it's a win-win. Smile. You gotta smile. You gotta smile because it's gonna make people feel more comfortable with you. Practice having a good handshake. Start with some small talk. If your interviewer asks you, how is it going? Do not just say good. Tell them how it's actually going. Share what you're up to. Yeah, and do some small talk. So like in January, right, where I had these manager interviews last week, I was like, so how's your first 2 weeks back from break been? And they're like, whoa, it's been hectic. Whoa, yeah. So we would have a little bit of small talk before the meeting. So small talk kind of picks everybody into ease. I would make sure to practice some of that. If your interview is virtual, pretty much be a YouTuber for a day. Make sure you have your camera set up, that it isn't like, this one's above me, so it should be like closer, like here. I should be like this, so it looks better. But my stand is up here, so right there. But you don't want it to be like looking down on you, because then you like smaller, you don't like as confident, and then you're like not looking eye contact. You don't want it to be under you, because then you're like all your chin and like your double chin is looking, so it's kind of weird. Let's see. Have some good lighting just so people can really see you. Just a standard lamp desk. Mute the webcam if possible. Make sure your background isn't distracting. My background is very distracting today, and there's like a mess, so that's why I put the virtual background. So it really is like being a YouTuber kind of. Tips to seem confident. Some of the tips that I started to realize, and it gives people a good break, is make the interviewer repeat a question. You're showing that you're not scared of, hey, repeat the question. The worst thing you can do is not answer the question completely. Sometimes some of these questions in interviews are like 3-part questions. So you show confidence by telling the interviewer, hey, can you repeat that question? Another one is tell them to give you some time to think. I love when people tell me, can you give me a minute, or give me a couple of seconds. I'm going to think of which of my examples is the best. One, it shows that you're prepared, that you brought several examples. Two, it shows that you're strategic and tactical, that you're thinking before speaking. You just don't spit stuff out. And then it gives the interviewers also a break, gives them a little water break, kind of they can breathe, and then you can go at it. You will feel it's eternity, but it really goes really quick. So those are the people I'm like, this person's confident, told me to repeat the question, and told me to he was going to think, this person, he or she was going to think about it. And it's starting to show, right? These are the type of people I want to work with. They're not just going to respond what they think they heard, because maybe sometimes they missed the question. So yeah. Let's see, not scared of the interviewer. Yeah. Breathe. Do some breathing technique before, and we said smile, and do the Superman pose. Really, Superman pose, like you do that, and it's funny because like if we were in person, I would make everyone do the Superman pose. So it's usually pretty funny, but this actually does give you confidence. I used to do the Superman pose before my presentations. I didn't do it today because I was rushing through. Maybe that's why I'm low energy, because I didn't do my Superman pose. But the other thing is listen to music that kind of like hypes you up. So when you go into the interview, you seem energetic. You seem like you're high energy. You seem like you're excited for this. So I was like in the bathroom listening to Eminem, Lose Yourself. And I was like, my palms are sweaty. I was listening to all this music, like hype myself up for the interview. So I was like, hi, it's Arnold Morales. Yeah, I'm super excited about this. So just trying to hype yourself up to kind of get in the mood. And you usually forget about your stress when you're trying to hype yourself up. Because it's really hard to go from high energy, which is like you're really highly stressed out, to really low energy to be neutral. So it's easier to go from high energy stressed out to high energy hyped up excited. So yeah, so that's why I always feel like I seem overly excited. That's kind of, I guess it's an okay thing. It's better than you seem super nervous. So yeah, I even actually have a routine where I do my presentations, but you have to follow me on Instagram for that one, Arnold the Engineer. Smile, smile, smile. The thing about smiling is it brings comfort into the conversation. It makes everything smoother and it brightens up the room. Preparation and practice are your two best friends for feeling confident. Yeah, I think that's the best thing. Like I even like for creating this presentation, right? I practiced it. I've practiced it so many times now that I feel confident coming up without even practicing right before the presentation. I'll just go jump in, go look at what it says, and I kind of remember stuff. So yeah, so just practice just makes perfect, I guess. Let's see. Okay, other common questions. Okay, the time check. Ooh, running out of time.
Hey, Arnold.
Mm-hmm.
Arnold, here's a question. If you have a virtual interview, which is pretty common these days,
Yes.
and the interviewer is on camera, don't you agree, or maybe you don't, tell me what you think, that the interviewee should also be on camera?
Yes.
Or yeah. Okay, yep. There you go.
Yep. If the interviewer, it just makes you stand out, right? It's better. Like, hey, if anyone here was with their camera on, they would be on top of my screen and they would stand out. And then later when I'm hiring, I'm like, oh yeah, you're the person with the camera on. So it's just things that are better. If you want to at a minimum mirror what other people are doing. So if at a minimum they're dressed business casual, you want to be business casual. If at a minimum they have their camera on, you want to turn your camera on. I would even go out and just turn your camera on since the beginning. If they say, hey, don't worry about it, you can turn off your camera if you want, then turn it off if you really don't want to, but you could even leave it on. But I think if they have it on, definitely have it on. Okay, perfect. That's a great question. So other common questions that you can get during the interview is, why do you want to leave your current position? Don't talk about that position sucks. I didn't like that employer, blah, blah, blah. You don't want to badmouth anyone. You just want to say, hey, I'm ready for a different challenge. I want a more of a significant challenge. I want to be more technical. I wanted to do like I want to go into space instead of commercial. Like you can use all these reasons, right, of why you're trying to leave your position. If they ask you what's your greatest weakness, you don't want to answer with a strength in disguise. Some people are like, well, my greatest weakness is I do too much, and then I over exceed. And like you really want to talk about a weakness, right? It's like actually, yeah, I tend to do it a little bit too much, so drop the ball, and then you talk about what you do to overcome that weakness. You don't want to just say, oh yeah, I suck at this. You want to talk about what you do to overcome that weakness. That's the biggest thing there. Let's see. If they ask you where do you see yourself in 5 years, pretty much just talk about gaining value from learning in the role and gaining more responsibility. Don't talk about another position. Don't talk about other companies. Just say, yeah, I would like to kind of grow in this role and kind of become either a lead or go into management, but I would want to stay in this role. This is kind of the role that systems engineering, for example, for me is what I really want to do. All right. After the interview, you want to send a thank you email ASAP. A lot of times they just make the decision like that same day or something, so you don't have to wait. Just send it right away. Send a message on LinkedIn, send an email saying thank you. Most of the time, they probably already made a decision, and they're gonna see that later. But it's always good to follow up. I have a friend that he didn't get an offer, but since he followed up and he asked for advice, then he ended up getting an offer because someone else declined their offer. So it's just keep on top of mind, right? Okay, I'm almost done to my general information. So everything that I talked about is on an article that I have. And I'll bring it up really quick. So everything I talked about, if you didn't take notes, then you can just go on LinkedIn and go to my newsletter. Not this one. LinkedIn job search. Oh yeah, if you missed the job search one, you can look through that one. So interview. A lot of what I talked about is in here. I pretty much created the presentation, then later, or I forgot which one I did, but they're kind of mimicked off each other. And I actually have a lot of this wording in like my notes, so I can reference if I don't have anything to say, or I can't remember what to talk about. So a lot of the things that I talked about is in this article. You can read through it. It's a really good refresher. There's also a podcast episode I did. Eventually, these are all actually going to be like chapters in my book. So once I have the book is out, I probably delete all this, but it's good in the meantime though. So yeah, so here's a lot of what I talked about. So you can go look at, and then there's other ones in there too that you can go look at, including like, hey, there's 300 hiring managers in one of these. Resume, show more results. So 100 space companies aside from NASA, and there's like one that has like 300 hiring managers on there. I think it's in this one, job search. Oh yeah, 300 hiring managers. So yeah, go look at those things. Let's see. Oh, why am I going to the next slide? Oh, is it? Okay, yeah, if you don't already, go follow me on LinkedIn. I share a lot of advice on engineering, aerospace, advice for students, early career engineers. I do one-on-one coaching, group presentations just like this one, and do some group coaching. If you want to kind of get to see the day in the life, the more real world, not professional side, but more of the fun side of what I do, go follow me on Instagram. And then I have some stuff out there in a podcast that was like, it stopped, but there's a lot of great stuff on there you can go look at. And I want to finish with thank you for having me. I really appreciate everyone calling in and learning. And we'll open up the floor. We have 5 more minutes. So we can jump into some questions. Ellen, I don't know if you had any other comment that you want to say before I went jump into questions, but thank you, Martin.
Oh, thanks. Somebody put in the chat, what's happening to the recording of this presentation? Yes, it will be on the AIAA Region IV website, which is behind a paywall. But hopefully that will encourage you to become AIAA members. We have a lot of fun in AIAA. Come on out and join us.
Yeah, especially if you're trying to aerospace, right? It's perfect. Well, a lot of you, if you follow me and you're not part of AIAA, then it's just like, hey, go do the AIAA. It's literally the same. Like you'll get all the advice, you'll get more connections. I was the vice president for my AIAA local student chapter. That's how much I can tell you. AIAA is amazing. All right, questions. One way to stand out, ask questions during the presentation.
I had a quick question, Arnold. Thank you so much once again for the presentation. I think even when you corrected that question that I thought would be good, already a great learning experience. But will this, you mentioned that there was a previous session. Where can I find that? Those previous sessions, like for example, the resume workshop?
Mhm. The two previous sessions are also on the AIAA Region IV Engage page, and that's where this one will go as well. So join AIAA and you can download them and watch them from there.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Perfect. And then at a minimum, you can always look at those articles too. They have a lot of good information, but the video is probably the best way to look at them. All right. Any other questions? Everybody's mind blown with all the information. They're like, whoa, that was a lot.
Hello, hi, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, thank you. Hi, Arnold. Thank you very much for the great presentation. I have learned a lot how to ace the interview.
Yes.
So in one point you said that look at the job post in order to prepare for the interview. So right now I'm career transitioning, and a lot of the post I'm applying right now, it doesn't directly match with my previous position. So in that case, how can I connect? How can I read? I mean, I read the job post, everything, but how can I connect with the new post with my previous experiences?
Yeah, great
I hope it's
question.
making sense.
Oh yeah, it makes perfect sense. Great
Thank you.
question. And if you think about it, right, when people apply to new jobs, most of the time they don't meet all of it qualification. Like they're not specifically that job exactly. So it's not like I'm just applying to the same exact job somewhere else. So there's always a little bit of difference between what you're currently doing and what you want to do. But in the case if you're changing industries or like a complete career transition, then think about it as what is all the transferable skills? So solving problems, the same kind of, hey, if I solve problems here, I can go solve problems a different way. So think about it like, even if it's like, okay, risk management, great. I didn't do risk management for airplanes, but I did risk management through the financial industry or whatever is relatable or like transferable. Use all that. And then everything that you don't know what it is, then you have to go find out what it is to be prepared for it. So think about all the translatable skills, and there's a lot. There's things with like communication, presentations, conflict resolution. There's a lot of things that you need like at all companies that are good at just showing that you're a good professional. I hope that answers your question a little bit.
Yes, thank you very much.
Perfect. Okay, we have time for one more question. Okay, cool. Thank you
Oh,
so
well.
much.
All right, I'll add that I sometimes hear people say like the one gentleman asked, what am I going to be working on at first, or what's my day-to-day like? And if you start any of these bigger complicated positions, you're going to be spending a lot of time in company level training at first, right? So yeah, you're going to be spending a lot of time in training and applying for access to all the systems you need. So, focusing questions on, after I have all the access to training I need, what will I be doing then might be a little better question.
Yeah.
And Arnold, I can't thank you enough. This has really been great. This series has really been wonderful. And I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say in the next session, which I think is on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, next session is on LinkedIn. How to go make that perfect LinkedIn
All right.
profile.
All right. Well, thank you so much,
much.
everyone. Look for this presentation later this week on the Engage site for AIAA Region IV. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.